Hilchos Shabbos Perek Shnayim V'Esrim. Redias Hapas means taking bread out of the oven. But it used to be that they would put the bread, they would stick it to the side of the oven, and therefore taking out of the bread out of the oven was involved in certain chokhmah. And that there was Isurim the Chazal gave on Redias Hapas, which even though it's not mamish malacha, it's not a malacha at all. But from deswegen they gave a Isur because there was a certain chokhmah taking it out. Masha'inkim bizman hazeh, when you just put the bread on the tray of the oven, so that's not called Redias Hapas, the pashtus. I'll call upon Redias Hapas. Afal pi she'eina malacha. There's no real malacha involved in Redias Hapas. Aber osru eisach chachamim shema yovi lefes. So as I say, there's a din we learned it earlier in Perek Gimel Halach Yud Ches that Chazal said you shouldn't put bread into the oven on Erev Shabbos unless it'll be karmu panel. Unless the crust will start forming a crust before Shabbos, you're not allowed to put bread into the oven before Shabbos. Now, if you did put bread into the oven, and you not like Chazal say, so it depends. If you did it b'shegig, so then you could take out kedei gimel sudas if you're taking it out Friday night before you ate gimel sudas, and also liyir de b'marda ela b'saken. You shouldn't take it out with a marda with the special utensil that they would use to take out the bread from the oven, but rather you should use a saken. It should be done derech shinui. Masha'in came, if you did it b'mezid, you're not allowed to use it at all. That was what we learned in Perek Gimel. Now, what happens if you put it earlier? If you put it earlier, you didn't put it, there was no Isser involved, you put it in and it was karma panel. So there was no mention, the pashtas, there's no Isser at all. L'chur it's mutter, and there's no Isser in being magbil, taking it out. However, over here, the Rambam is saying a general din, Redias Hapas, is osru eisach chacham shemi yovi lefes. So the Alter Rebbe in Shulchan Aruch writes that, I mean, even though it doesn't say clearly here in Rambam, but the Alter Rebbe writes in Shulchan Aruch that even if you put it in the heter, there's no hagbola that it has to be gimel sudas. But on the other end, if you don't need this bread, in other words, you have other bread, you have more than you need, so then, you have plenty, in other words, you don't need this bread, so then you shouldn't take out this bread. The heter of this bread is only if you need it. That's first of all. And secondly, however, if you take it out, so then you don't have to use a marda. There's this din of, you don't have to use a sakin. This din of using a sakin is only if you did an isser. In other words, if you did an isser, it was b'shegig, and you're being matzel gimel sudas, so then there's a din, you can only be matzel gimel sudas, and it could only be b'sakin and not b'marda. Nachamol. Let's read again. Redias Hapas. Afal pi she'eina malacha, osru eisach chachamim, shemi yovi lefes. Now, Hamad b'pas b'tanim b'beidiyim, the kiddush olav hayim. Now, the Rambam doesn't say that it was done b'eifen shaliser, but Hamad b'pas b'tanim b'beidiyim, the kiddush olav hayim, is matzel mimenu mozen shalish sudas. So that we already learned that din is only when it was done b'eifen shaliser. Ve'emu la'acherim be'u v'atzil lechem. You shouldn't use the special utensil that they would normally do to take out the bread. And again, based on what it said in Perek Gimel, this is talking about when they did it beheter and it was b'shegig. They did it b'isur, it was b'shegig. Mashiach, they did it beheter, so over there was no hagbolus. But nevertheless, we mentioned that the Alter Rebbe says that even if you did it beheter gomer, in other words, you put it in enough time that it should be karmu panah. But still there's a hagbola. The hagbola is that you should only take out if you need it. If you need the bread. If you don't need the bread, you shouldn't take it out. Halacha beis. Mipnei ma osru chachamim likonis b'merchatz b'Shabbat. There's an issur of going into a merchatz. Why? Mipnei balonim shohayu mechamin chamin b'Shabbos. Ve'emrim me'erev Shabbos huchmo. So maybe the merech atakoni, you shouldn't use the merchatz. Lefichach. And I was be'emes mitzad etzam adin. There's nothing wrong with washing yourself on Shabbos. And if the water was huchmo erev Shabbos, so everything is perfectly fine. Water that was huchmo on Shabbos, you're not allowed to be making water on Shabbos. And if you were making water on Shabbos, you're not allowed to use it. So mitzad this gzeir of the balonim, so therefore they instituted that you shouldn't use a merchatz on Shabbos. And then there was a further gzeir of the gazru that not only in America, but Bechlal, Shli Yishtatev Kol Gufi B'Chamin, person shouldn't wash himself with chamin, rinse himself with chamin, v'afilu b'chamin shehuch erev Shabbos. Upon of yod v'raglav mutter. If you have water that was hooked erev Shabbos, you're allowed to wash upon of yod v'raglav in warm water. On cold water, there was never an issur. There's no issur to wash yourself in cold water on Shabbos. Although in Shulchan Aruch is brought down that the minig hanofutz is not to wash yourself even in cold water on Shabbos. But mitzad ikra the dinner, there's no issur. But medvar mamurim that there's an issur that Chazal instituted an issur b'chami ho'er, gezeirem mishum merchas, something that was heated through fire. A natural warm spring water is mutter lishtatev bem kol gufet. It's like cold water. You're allowed to be mishtatev kol gufet. But also lirchetz. However, even natural water is also lirchetz b'mayim cham shebema'oris neishamayri yesh b'hevel and v'yavel dezeya v'nimtze kemerchetz. So there's another hachok of merchetz. So b'kitzer, there's an issur of merchetz mepnei balon. That issur is even kedei lahazia, not to watch yourself, lahazia, to go into a schwitz. Then there's another issur b'chlal to rinse yourself with warm water, kol gufei. And then, but madvar mamurim only if it's something that's chami or it was through fire. Masha'inkin natural water is fine if it's warm water. Masha'inkin namayra where it's mazia, so then even natural water is also. Halacha gimu. Mischamim odem kineged hamagdura. And then the Yetzim is shtatev kol gufim b'tzein. You warm yourself and then you go and you take a cold shower, or whatever. Avol einim shtatev kol gufim b'tzein, and then u'mischamim kineged hamadura. Why? Mipnei shemavshir mayim shalov v'nimtza kireichitz kol gufim b'chama. Because by going while you're wet to the madura, so basically you're warming up the water. And without the concern is not the warming up the water. The concern is that it's considered that you're washing yourself in warm water. That's it. Hamevi silin shultzeinen b'toich mayim chamen. You have a pipe, that pipe has cold water, and that cold water is in hot water. Afilu b'teich chamitveria, even if it's a natural hot water, which you're allowed to wash yourself in. So the chura, in chamitveria itself, you can wash yourself. But over here, you have a water with a cold pipe, a pipe with cold water, and that's going through chamitveria. Is harei elu kechamin shehuchnu b'Shabbos v'asurin b'rechitzu b'shtia. Even if you put it erev Shabbos, because you put the water in erev Shabbos, so the chura, what's wrong? But the problem is that it's considered atmona. You're not allowed to be matmin b'davar ha'meisav hevel. So over here, I mean, it's the shayla. It's a mishnah that says that's what used to happen, and the chacham will mevatel it. But the question, and what was the issur? So, but it's brought in the Shulchan Aruch is brought down that even if it's on erev Shabbos, so it's considered like a person was matmin b'davar ha'meisav hevel on erev Shabbos, which is usur. I mean, mela, that water is kecham and shehuchnu b'Shabbos, which you're not allowed to use even for upon the other raglav. Halacha dalet. Maybe Adam Kitan Shomayim, a jug of water or whatever, a container of water, Umeniche Kineged Hamadura, Lay Bishvil Shiachamu, Alakadesh Tofuk Tzinasam, to take away the chill. Vechain, Meniach Pach Shel Shem Kineged Hamadura, also Kadeshi Posher, Lay Shiachem. In order, it should become a little lukewarm, but it shouldn't become hot. Now the question is whether in other words, if you bring something near the fire and you're only leaving it there in order for it to become warm, and you don't leave it there for it to become hot, but had you have left it there, it could have become hot. So many Rishonim say that's usher, because since it has a potential of becoming hot, even though lapel you have no, you are not intending on leaving it there, and Yitaka didn't leave it there. But since it had a potential of becoming hot, so that's also an issue. The Rambam, the Pashtus Advarim, is that it's mutter. In other words, as long as you take it away before it becomes hot, then it becomes mutter. But la'alocha, you're not allowed to do it. If you bring something to a place where it could become yatsi ledus bay, even though you have no intention of leaving it there for that long. The soch adam yodi b'mayim b'shemet umechamim neged hamadura. Because you can't let the water stay there so long that it should be, your hand that's wet should be there so long that it should actually become that the moisture should become yatziledesbe. Mechamen beged, umanichi al gabi meir b'Shabbos. You could take a beged and put it on something that's hot or next to heat, and the mail of that beged will become warm, and then you take the beged and you put it on top of your stomach on Shabbos, which will be helpful, like a hot water bottle. So rather than a hot water bottle, you have a hot piece of cloth, and that hot piece of cloth became through being near a fire or near whatever. In today's day would be, let's say, putting it on a radiator. So that would be, you put a piece of cloth on a radiator, it becomes very hot, and then you use it to warm something up, to warm a part of your body. Ambati shel merchetz, shi melei mayim cham, eines lo mayim tzein, shaharei mechamim on harbe. Now, ambati is a cliche. There's a klirishin, a cliche. A klirishin is the pot of water that was on the fire. And even when you took it off from the fire, but it's still in its original keli, which it was heated in. A klisheni is when that water was transferred into another keli. And ambati, it wasn't heated in the ambati; it was put into the ambati from a keli that was heated. So this is a klisheni. But on the other end, since an ambati, it's a large keli, and it's also, they make it very hot. So here the din is that you're not allowed to even put water into a klisheni. That's a chidush of an ambati. Ambati shel merchetz, she malei mayim chamen, ein neisen lo mayim tzein, sharei mechamim on harbe. V'chein, liyitin l'teicha pach shel shemen, mipnei shuk mevashli. To put a pach shel shemen into this hot bath is asur. However, avol neisen hu mayim chamen l'teich ambati shel tzein, fakir, to take hot water and to put it into a cold ambati. And through that, it'll take away the chill of the ambati. That's fine. Halacha vov. Mecham shepina mimenu mayim chamen, muter litin l'teicha mayim tzein kedei lafshiron. So you have a large chainik, something that you cooked water in, you emptied it out, and now you're pouring cold water in order for that cold water not to be so cold. So it's not becoming cooked, it's not becoming that hot, but it's taking away the chill from this cold water. So that's been said. Umuter lotzuk mayim chamen l'teich mayim tzeinen, etzeinen l'teich hachamen, abevuhu sheliyeh beklirishin mipnei shemechamim on harbe. So in other words, if you pour water into hot water, so as long as that hot water is not in a klirishin, so that's fine. If you pour water into a klirishin, so that would be a concern that you're cooking the water that's going into the klirishin. Because since it's a klirishin, so therefore by putting tavlin into this klirishin, it's considered you're cooking it. And therefore, even though it's a klirishin, so the Rambam is saying that it's all right to put in melach. Is afal pishu yiseh b'kaira. So then, so to pour, in other words, to put the tavlin in the kaira, and then timima'ara from the klirishin on the klisheni, that would be iri klirishin, that wouldn't be permitted. But over here, you took the tavshil, you put it into the kaira, so everything that's in the kaira is already a klisheni, and now you're putting tavlin into it, so that's mutter. So we consider the Rambam is saying that tavlin in the klirishin you can't put in tavlin, a klirishin that was mesulik me'aloish, but you could put in melach, and a klisheni you could put in tavlin. Halacha zayin. Ein sheidin sachiltis, bein bepeshin, bein betzeinen. Avol sheida ese betreich hachemes. Now, over here we're dealing with hilchas bishul, and here we're talking about being sheidin sachiltis, which bepashtos is verbunden with the union of refuah. It looks like you're preparing something for refuah. So I'll call upon him here. It says, "Ein sheidin sachiltis, bein bepeshin, bein betzeinen." You can't be sheidin. Avol sheida betreich hachemes, because then it's not near a refuah. So then there is a shade of Shabbos b'tzeinen, umeniche b'cham atchiyicham b'sheisa. Why? Kedei shelo in posek malishtes. Apparently, if you did it already on 2 days, so not to do it on Shabbos, would be a sakana. So therefore, there's a special heter, even though normally ain't sherin, even on tzeinin. But over here, there's a special heter, but the heter should be only b'tzeinin. And then is manicha b'chama shiyichem v'sheisus. So maybe that's connected to the hilchas bishul. That over here, even when you have to, you shouldn't put it in chama, you should put it in tzeinin. And that tzeinin, you should then put b'chama shiyichem v'sheisus. Halacha ches. Dover shenizbashul kedem haShabbos. Einishra b'chamin melifnei haShabbos. Is afal pi shu achshav tzeinin muter l'shreisi b'chamin b'Shabbos. So in other words, this is the idea of ein bishul achabishul. Even though you're putting it in something hot, but since it was already nizbashul kedem haShabbos, there's no concern. Aber v'davar shu tzeinin michare v'leiboa b'chamin me'elam is madichanesi b'chamin b'Shabbos im lehoisa dechosig mar melochte. So in other words, to just rinse it in hot water, since the rinsing in hot water is not really going to cook it, so that's permissible. But to soak it in hot water, that's usher, because then it would be a question of bishul. Mutter lahachim b'chama. To take something and heat it in the sun is mutter. Aval pi, because sun heating, the issue of heating is only in fire, not in the sun. Aval pi she'asher lahachim b'tuldas achama. Why? So those tuldas achama, you have a frying pan that was sitting in the sun, and then you put something into that frying pan. It's usher. Masha'inkin over here, directly in the sun is fine. Why? She'ini boy litis mechama lur. Tuldas achama. Nobody knows. You see a frying pan is hot. You don't know if you're taking it off the stove or you're taking it out of the sun. Masha'inkin, if you have chama, so chama is clear that you're heating it from the chama. She'eni bolitis mechama lur. The fichach mutter liten mayim tzein b'shemesh k'dei shehi chama. V'chein neisen mayim yofim. That's a heating. Now v'chein neisen mayim yofim l'teich mayim roim b'shvil sheyitzonu. So if you have a jar of good cold water, and good water, and you want it to get cold, so you could put it into water, which will make it cold. In other words, you put the jar into the water to make it cold. Also, that's not a problem. These are concerns of whether it looks like you're about to cook or you're about to pickle. So here you could mix water, salt, and oil, and you dip your bread in it to eat. Only if you do a little. It looks like you're preparing something to cook. A preparation of a suda. To prepare strong salt water. It's like you're doing something, you're creating a mixture which you're gonna pickle or soak things in it. You soak fish in it. To salt an egg is fine. But to salt retach, radish is usher. It's usher to pickle things, not with the raisa, with the rabbanon, because it's nirek mavashel, and it's also usher to start salting things, which that salting it will look like as if you're about to pickle. However, a mutter little snain, there's to start salting things snain, which looks like you're preparing it to be pickled, is usher. But to salt something, a piece of snain, and then to go ahead and to eat it, that's perfectly fine. Mutter la'arev yayin udvash pilpum b'Shabbos la'ochlam. That's permitted. Aval yayin umayin b'shemen afarsamein. So that's usher. She'en ze roy lachilas briyim v'chen kol kiyetz b'zeh. So wine, oil, honey, and pepper is fine, but wine, water, and shemen afarsamein, that's usher. Halacha Yudalit. Chardal shaloshim erev Shabbos. You already kneaded it. You mixed it with liquid. Is lemocher memache biyadei bein biyad bein bekeli v'neisel letechi dvash. So you could squeeze it with your hands and put honey into it. Obevulei yitrif. You shouldn't beat it. Elamarav. You could mix it. In other words, don't do the derech of cooking. Shachlayim, which is cress, shetorfei mi erev Shabbos. Is again lemacher neisel letechi shemen v'chemetz v'tavlin. Obevulei yitrif. Again, you shouldn't beat it in a way that you normally do in preparing for cooking. Ela ma'arif, you just mix it. Shum shiriske me'erev Shabbos, you have garlic, which you also crushed erev Shabbos. L'mocher neisten l'techagrisin, but again, v'lei yishchek, you shouldn't break it up. Ela ma'arif, you just mix it. You shouldn't like break it up again and beat it and break it up. That it should be further like of the tchina of this garlic. Halacha Yud Gimel. Hanetel seir migufa adam chayiv mishum goizes. Lefichach oster lirchitz es hayadayim b'davar shemesher es haseir vade. Something that'll certainly take off the hair of your hands. You're not allowed to use. Again, all of yetzebei. Aber mutter lochiv es hayadayim v'afar levoina v'afar pilpulin v'afar yismen u'kiyetzbem or other types of substances, even though they might take off hair. And it's not obsecration. But it's something that's obsecration, you're not allowed to, even with einem mischaven. Masha'inkin, if it's obsecration, you're not allowed to. Now, irav davar shemesher asar vaday, im davar she'eni mesher vaday, is im hoya harev midavar hamesher is asur lachavbei, im lav mutter. So in other words, if you have a mixture which is mixed with both, so then if most of it is davar hamesher, you're not allowed to. Why? Because then it's obsecration. Because since reiv is davar hamesher, it's obsecration. Mashenkin, if reiv is not davar hamesher, so then you're taking something you're not really sure whether or not it's going to happen. So therefore, it's not asur. Asur lireis b'mare shel matches b'Shabbos, to look at a mirror that's made out of metal, because you'll notice when you're looking in the mirror that there's some hairs that you want to get off, and therefore you may take them off. Even though this mirror is attached to the kaisel, so you can't take it off. But nevertheless, it was the general takana with a lay plug that you're now allowed to use a mirror made out of matches. A mirror which is not made out of metal is mutter liris be'afilenik for. Then if it's portable mirrors, so that's also fine. Halacha tezvav. Hamechabes chayiv mishum alabin. V'astechet ksus is chayiv mishum mechabes. Lefichoch oster litchek matlis emucha kietzem befihu ashisha, to put in a little shmatter or a little piece of muchas, which is soft material, into the top and into the mouth of a little jar, because you may end up squeezing out liquid from this cloth. They mekanchen the sveig, and to use a sveig, which is a sponge, to wipe something off, you cannot use elim kain yesh if it has a handle. If you actually have to hold the sponge, it's also. If it has a handle, so then there's no concern of schita. Because if you have it just taking a beged and covering a chavi shomayim is also concerned, because if it's muchanla, so maybe you're not makbid on it, because this is what it does, so there's no concern of yischit. If it's something that's ain't muchanla, something you just need to cover it, and you're taking a piece of beged and you're afraid maybe it'll fall and get wet, and then you'll start squeezing it out. So there was an issue. A person has a barrel of, let's say, wine, and the barrel breaks. Now he wants to save some of the wine that's coming out of the barrel. Is matzel mimenu mashu tzarech l'Shabbos loy u'le'orchav b'lvad. So you could only be matzel. There's concern that if you're going to start trying to be matzel the entire thing, you may come to do an isser. So therefore, you could only be matzel what you need and what your orchim need. Abelvad shel yispek b'yayin. In other words, you shouldn't put cloth over there to absorb the yayin and then put it into a keli for the wine that was absorbed in the keli or in the sponge should go out, or you tap it with shemen, or even to take the shemen with your hand. There's a concern that you may end up doing l'idei schita. So therefore, you could only go ahead and take a keli and let the keli collect the yayin which you need for Shabbos and for you and your orchim. The keitzad matzel mimeno maybe keli u'menich techter. Aber v'liyavi keli acher v'yichlit. You shouldn't bring. Let's say you have already a keli under it. Now you're bringing another keli. So because the keli under is only going to be able to hold so much, and you want to chaper, so you take another keli, you're holding it in the air, or you finish with this keli, you put another keli. You can put only one keli, and also you shouldn't bring a keli acher v'yitzaref. In other words, let's say you're putting a keli under it, but lepel, it's not really going in well into the keli, so you're taking another keli for it to, so to speak, go onto that keli, and from that it'll go to the back of the keli, and it'll be like a way of getting into the first keli. You connect the top keli, an extra keli, with the second. You first take a keli, but the water is not going directly over it. So you take another keli and you make it into, like, so to speak, it should be like a little pipe. You're making this keli, so to speak, a makeshift pipe to be able to get it into the keli. That's also asur. Nachamol, ketzed matzel mimena, maybe keli minech tachta, v'liyavi keli acher v'yiklit, or keli acher v'yitzaref, be mitzarefed with the first keli, so the two together should get it into the keli on the floor, because gzeir Hashem yavi keli derech rishus harabim. If you're going to start getting excited about bringing kelim to save it, there's a concern you may bring kelim derech rishus harabim. There's dambu archem is maybe keli acher v'keli acher mitzaref for the rishon, because now you need archem, so you need it. You can't say, well, I'm going to have archem. If Ella Yasmin, first you have to be mazman the archem, and then there's a special heter because you need it. Archem. Even though the pale you didn't have intention of having archem, but because you're losing this, so therefore you want to bring archem in order to be able to save it. So that's also mutter. Halacha Yud Zayin. Tit shall gabi big day. Mechas chesei mibifnim, ve'ene mechas mesei b'chutz. You have tit on the beged, so you can't rub the two sides of the beged which have the tit on it, and that will get the tit off. You could rub the inside of the beged which doesn't have the tit on it, and somehow or another by rubbing the inside of the beged, the tit which is on the outside of the beged will fall off. Why? What is the concern? Because there's no real isser in taking this tit off. But if you're going to start getting involved and actually rubbing the side which has the tit, you may end up washing it. You can pull it off with your nail, but that's only as broad if it's wet, if it's dry. So there's another shaila, the shaila of teichin. Hamachas ches es asuder asur mipnei shumalabde. So machas ches is after you wash it, you rub it, or you pull it apart and you rub it. So a suder is a more chashiva beged. It's like an outer beged. So therefore you want it to be very clean. So therefore part of this kiskus process is in order to cleanse it. Mashenkin a choluk is a shirt which you wear inside, and therefore you're not so concerned. It's more of an undergarment, and therefore you're not so concerned about how clean it is. You're more concerned only that it should be soft. So therefore, we assume that this kiskus is only to make it soft, not to make it clean. Is mutter over there. You're only interested in making it soft. Minol a sandal shenislachlich betit ubetzeya mutter l'shachshich b'mayim. To rub it with water, you use your hand and you rub it with water to clean it. Avalakapse, which is like to take two of them and to wash them together and to rub them together, that would be asur. To rub those new ones is asur because you're making it like you're beautifying it. It's more like part of the malacha. You could be soch the min olim chadoshim. However, mekanchim you could only be mekaneach min olim yishon. Kar ikeses shehoy aleim tzei tinuf is again mekanchim b'ser martut. You could wipe it with a shmata. Imhoysa al shel is neis no le'amayim achetichla. You could pour water because it's not absorbent. Leather is not going to be absorbent, so therefore there's no problem of pouring water on it. Allah yutas. Nish neslach l'cho yodi betit mitkancha biznav asus ubiznav apora or b'mapa hakosho hasuya leches ba'aketzim. You could go ahead and clean it on these items because even though normally a sus is the muktzah, but there's not a sus, it says there's not a sus, it's not muktzah, it's not apora, and over here it's in order to be able to clean your hands. So therefore you could wipe your hands on these items. Mapa hakosha asuya leches ba'aketzim. Avolei b'mapa shemekanchim because you're not so worried about it being clean. These items. You shouldn't use a regular towel. Normally you have towels and they become dirty, so you wash them. Over here, they're going to become very dirty. So the mele, you're going to wash it. There's a concern of washing it. So you take this mappa hakosha, which is asuya lechas ba'aketzim. You're not worried about washing it. Mi shirachatz b'mayim is mistapik balun tise. He uses his towel. And even though the towel became wet from wiping himself, that's fine. It fell into water. You're not allowed to spread them out. Notice to hang up wet clothes, you're not allowed to. Even though it became wet by you walking wherever, you didn't wash it, but it became wet. So you're not allowed to hang up wet clothes. I feel a little bit of basic. And the shot koliyapsha. So that's the issue of hanging up wet clothes, because people will think that you wash the clothes. You're doing it in your house, nobody sees. So here's the rule: is there's certain place that we say that the farhesia it's usher and betzina is mutter. So there's always a question that we have. The general rule, the basic rule is that kol mokim shasur chacham v'maras ayin is afilu b'chad v'chador masur. Halacha chafal shtei mitari zu al gabi zu. You have two mikvois, and neither of them have the shear. Is neitl zam kak mebintayim. So you take the kak, which is in between the nose, between these two mikvois, there's a hole which is stuffed, and that's umish, and you take that out, umishikon, and then so you make them together that there should be one maker. Umachzir is a kaklum kemri, and you put it back. You're worried. We said before you can't put back a cloth on top of a bottle because of a chash schita. He doesn't want it to be squeezed tightly. He wants that the water should still mix with each other because they don't have the shear. So if you have, let's say, a drain pipe, and it has like a hole on the side of the drain pipe, and you're afraid that through the hole water is going to come over, and it's going to be a tzufu amayim ala echlon bala kelim. So you're allowed to, because you're not really so makpid that it should be mamish no water. You don't want there should be a lot of water spreading out, but you're not makpid that it should be mamish stuff. Abel ein peikik is an abiv kedei sheyerdu hamayim leber. Knows if you have a bib, a drain pipe that has two exits. It has an exit going out, and then there's another. It comes to like a T. In other words, there's two ways of going out of the pipe. It could go outside to Rishus Harabim. It could go into a bear. Now, if you want, let's see the water in the bear, because you need water in the bear to be used. So you're going to stuff the side which is towards the Rishus Harabim. So obviously the water won't be able to go out there, so it'll go out into the bear. And over here, if you're interested in going into the bear, you're interested in all going into the bear. So you're going to stuff the side towards the Rishus Harabim very strongly. So therefore, that's what he's saying. Aval ein poikikin as abiv kedei sheyerdu hamayim leber, because over there shema yisched beishadechik shari apkak shari b'mayim. The pkak is shari b'mayim, and there's a concern that you're going to put it in tight. Mashenkin in the previous case where you're only worried that it shouldn't go over to kelim and to oichlim, so vice versa over there you don't do it so tight. The main thing is you don't want there should be a ribu water. Okay. Halacha chav beis. Osir l'sakin beis yad shel b'gadim. In order to fix, in order to deal with the sleeves, and that's how do you deal with it? The l'shabram shvarim. You make certain bends in the sleeves. Kederach shemasakin habgadim shemachapsin. Vice is after you wash them, you fold them in a certain way. Maybe it's something like we would know French cuffs, but maybe it's more complicated. That you're preparing it in such a way that this is preparing it for wearing it. It's like a certain tikkun of a kelim. V'chein im mekaplim abgadim b'Shabbos kederach she'esim b'cheil b'bgadim she'ichapsu esim. Vice is the kipul, the folding of the clothes was like helping to make sure that the clothes should smooth out, and that was part of the process of preparing the clothes. So that's also you're not supposed to do. After you wash the clothes, you fold it. The folding wasn't only just a practical thing to put it away. The folding it was a process of of preparing the clothes for wearing. It was like for us ironing. Is mutter lekaple uleposhte uleskasses be kadesh yisnoi b'Shabbos. So notice if it was necessary, so this isur that is kipul in such a case where he doesn't have any other clothes, so they will matter to be mekapel uleposhte uleskasses be. But who she beged chodesh loven sharei u'mismaich u'mislach lichmiyad. So in other words, according to the Rambam, since it's mismaich and mislach miyad, the pastos are dvarim, so it's more necessary. This is a special dispensation out of necessity. So since he's a kli lov and it's mismaich mislach miyad, so therefore you're mekapel it. The Rashi learns that since it's mislach miyad, so it's not really a serious tikkun because it's only a very temporarily tikkun. I think somewhere in Rambam, I don't see that it's like beferish, not like Rashi, but I think it's accepted that Rambam means that only in such a situation, there was this dispensation, this special heta, this dispensation that they made that you're allowed to be mekapel is only in a case where it's a beged love and shemismayach mislach lechmiyat. Halacha chav gimel. Hatzivei ma'avis malachas leficha chasel isha lahaver srak al paneh b'pnei sheikit tzivas. Even though there's no real tzviyah ba'ir, the era guf is not really considered tzviyah, but from that way midrabon you're not allowed. V'ateifer ma'avis malachas leficha chasel lemalis hakar v'akesed hachadoshim b'muchim. There's to fill a pillow with soft material is also gzeir shemayit for you. You may close it. If you had a pillow or a koldra and muchen fell out, the soft material, the fillers fell out, is matzid neis Shabbos. To return something that was there is mutter, but to put l'chatchila you're not allowed. Hakireya miyavis malachis lefichach mishin estapchu begadol bekeitzim. He got stuck in thorns. Is mafrishon b'tzina u'mismameh kadesh liyikara. He takes it out and he does it in a private way, not birash, and he does it slowly in order for it not to tear. And also you have to understand it's a union of mekalkel. I mean, what's the nikro? He's saying he's even if it wasn't nischav, it was a kilkel. When a person puts on new clothes, we're concerned. Maybe it's not the right size and it'll tear. So that's not a concern. You take the nut, you wrap it in a piece of cloth and you bang it, and in order to break the nut, to take out the nut from the shell. And the fact that this matlas might tear is not a concern. Is when you put things together, and even either with a nail or you squeeze them together, you put them together. So that's chayim mishum beinu. Lefichach kol adlosis hamchubaris lekarka leinoitul noisom v'lei machzin gzeira shema yitka. So the Rambam here is saying that even though we're talking about adlosis hamchubaris lekarka, the concern is shema yitka. But if you put it back without the yitka, there's no concern. Earlier the Rambam said that when we're talking about a bear or a dus, which is in the karka, so when you put back the cover, so then even without yitka, you're chayav mishum boina. So l'chur over here, l'chur, what's he saying? Shema yitka. So the Taz writes that pshat is over here. The Rambam is talking in the tzir where it wasn't originally part of the karka. So chidush that the mechubar is lekarka. In other words, we're dealing with a keli that was originally not mechubar lekarka, and now it's mechubar lekarka. So now this keli, which is now mechubar lekarka, there's a concern shema yitka. Without yitka, wouldn't be an issur. But if it was originally part of the karka, so then there's an issur even without yitka. Okay, so that's if it's mechubaris lekarka. Avol del shida tevo migdal ushar dal sakelim is noitlin v'lei machzdin. To take it off, you're allowed to, but now you're not allowed to. V'em nishma tzira tachna shalem. If it slipped out a little bit, it's not completely off, but it was slipped out a little bit. It was nishmat. So then derech kaneselim came and you can push it back. This is in any case. B'migdosh is not only when it slipped out a little bit, you can push it back. Nor b'migdosh marzir nesi. Even if it slipped out completely, the tzira tachton, you could return it. Abul tzira elyon shenishmat is also lachzira b'kol makim, because over there's more of a concern b'kol makim gzeira shem yitkos. Even though in shvus b'mikdash, but this shvus of the tzira elyon, which is a gzeira shem yitka, so this chal even in the mikdash. Ein goydlin esara reish, to braid the sara reish, ve'ein puiks enoisai, and to separate it somewhere or another, to make a split in the hair, one side on one side and the other side somewhere or another, it's building up the hair in a special fashion. Mipnei shenira kibena, it's a special thing. It's nira kibena, so you're not allowed to do this. Ve'emach zidin menera shel chulyes, to a menera that's made up of pieces together, to put them back together. V'lei kisi amafutzel, or a chair that's made up of pieces. V'lei shulchan amafutzel, ukiyetz again. Mipnei shenira kibena. V'im hirzer potter she'ein binyan b'kelim, ve'in stira b'kelim. So since it's only kelim, so it's not really proper binyan. V'im hoyer rafui. But if it was lechatchila there, but it was just a little loose, so mutar lachzira, you're allowed to. So in other words, to put it back, you're not allowed to. But if you did it, it's midrab, so it's you're not chayiv. But if it was lechatchila there, but it was just loose, so you can put it back. The aim is sakin chulya shel sheder shel cotton zubit tzadzu mipnei shenira kibena. Because you have a child that you have to adjust his spine. This is not something which is, it's critical. It's something which could be done after Shabbos. So you shouldn't adjust those vertebrae, suppose, of the spine on Shabbos because it's near kibena. If a person makes a roof on oil, it means a roof. It means a oil kavua, a permanent roof. Since that's a chi of the rai, so you shouldn't make up a temporary roof. And when they say el arai, el arai pot, el arai b'Shabbos. If you have already an existing oil arai, and certainly if you have an existing oil kavua, to add something which is arai, is mutter on Shabbos. Ketzat talis shoysa prusa al hoamudim oil aksolim. The hoysa krucha and the talis was rolled up. Part of it was rolled up. Kedem HaShabbos is a mishum mimenu gav tefach mastuach. If there's a tefach of this talis which is spread out, is harehu meiteches kula b'Shabbos. Then he could spread out the rest of it. Achiyasa el gadol v'chein kol keitzvazah. We're used to b'negei sukkahs. You have, let's say, a canopy over your sukkah. So to spread the canopy over the sukkah. So if the canopy is partially spread out a little bit, so it's already, there's a tefach of it. So there's already a tefach of an el aray, so you can spread the rest because you're made of an el aray. Masha'in kain, if there's nothing spread out, so to put an el aray, you're not allowed. Halacha chavches. Ein toilin is akila, to hang up like a what's called a bed canopy. Shari nasis tachta oil aray. When you put this canopy over the bed, so you're making an oil. It's an oil aray, but it's an oil. Umuter laniach mita v'kisa v'traskel. In other words, you set up a bed. Under the bed there's an oil, there's space, and under the chair, under the table. So there's no problem of setting up a table or a chair. In other words, we're talking about not building it, because building it is also, we said before. But we're talking about setting it up, so that's mutter, even though through that you're having an oil. Kol oil mishupa. She'ein begagi tefach. So in other words, you have a slanty roof, it comes to 2 points. You know, the two sides of it go up in a slant, and they meet at a point. So in the point that they meet, there's no tefach. And also, if you're going to take this point and you're going to go down 3 tvachim, and then you're going to look at the width of this tent, how far is it? So if within 3 tvachim of going down from the point, it's wide a tefach, so then there's a tefach there, so it's lavud. So even though there's no straight tefach, but we look at it as if it's straight because it's lavud, and therefore it's as if there's a tefach on the top of the tent. Masha'inkin, if it's so, in other words, it's so narrow on top that when you go down 3 tvachim straight, we're talking about 3 tvachim straight, there won't be the width of a tefach there. Nachamo. Kol eil mishupa she'ein begabi tefach. On top there's no tefach, and also v'lei bepachas mishleisha samuch legagi. There's no reich of tefach. There's no tefach. In other words, when you go down from the middle point of the tent, if you go straight down, and there won't be a tefach in the width between the 2 sides of this tent, which come up on a slant, is areza eil aray. So therefore, this is considered eil aray. No matter what, no matter even how long you want to keep it there. Okay. Talus kfula. Shahayu aleh chuten shitluye behem erev Shabbos. You have a talus kfula. Talus kfula is you have like a talus which is hanging over let's say a rod, a piece of wood, and it's hanging from both sides. And now you're going to go and spread it. You're going to take it. You'll spread it, and it'll be a shtickle oil on it. So nachamal a talus kfula. Shahayu aleh chutin shitluye behem erev Shabbos. That had the strings which it hangs on is mutal and teisa or mutal lefarka. So even though normally we say an oil aray had to have already a reich of tefach in order to be made of an oil, but over here, since it's already like ready for what it needs to do, there's already the chutim attached to it, and it's only a question of pulling it. So therefore, it's already keilu, like it's already there. It's like it's only being moisav on the oil aray, and therefore, even though the pale mamish no oil, it's mutal. Mutal and teisim, mutal lefarka, v'chein aparechas. Parechas also, to move a parechas on Shabbos is also mutter. You know, you have a parechas is a curtain. So a curtain is like it's also a temporary structure, so to speak. It's to move this parechas back and forth, that's mutter on Shabbos because it's made for it. In other words, it's made for going back and forth. So therefore, that's not really considered a siyas oil or a siyas binyan. I think that's the pshat. V'chein parechas. Halacha lamed. Kilas chsanim, a bridal canopy. She'ein begaga tefach, ve'ein bepachas mishleish shesamach legaga reichet tefach, like we said before, is hail v'himesu kanis lekach. It's prepared for this purpose, so it's already prepared. So that's the idea. The idea is you're not going to make an oil aray, but if something was already prepared, in other words, you had already an oil and you're only being moisav on oil aray, or you have something which was already prepared for the oil for as it being an oil aray. So therefore, lekach hail the himusukanis l'sach mutal and teisa or mutal parka. You can put it up and you can put it down. Bahu shalei tehei mishulshelis me'alamita tefach. So the Maggid Mishnah brings pshat relation to mishulshelis me'alamita tefach means it shouldn't be hanging down. So me'alamita, but it means lower than the bed. In other words, the canopy goes down over the bed, and if it's hanging down under the bed, so to speak, a tefach from the bed, the lashon mishulshelis me'alamita. Tefach, in other words, be hanging from the bed, a tefach down. So then it's like kilo, it has walls, so that gives it more of a tzur of an oil, and therefore it's also. Kaka chalein, something you close the chalein with, bisman shu mesuken lekach, it's prepared to use as a covering for the chalein, is afal pi she'eni kosher ve'eni toli, muter lifkik bech chalein. So in other words, it's a question of beina, you're adding it to the binyan, but since it's made to take out and to put in, and it's asu lekach. So even though it's not mesukin that it's hanging, some hold that it has to be hanging. This is in Gemara, but from deswegen over here, the Rambam is asking as long as it's mesukin lekach is mutter. Koiva sheoisen al reish, v'yeshlei sofa makefes sheoiset sel k'mei oil alavushay is mutter lelavshay. A person has a hat, and the brim of the hat extends, and it makes like an oil, so you're allowed to wear it. If the person made such a something, he made something on his head that sticks out. And over here we're talking about a regular hat. It happens to have a brim, and normally a brim goes down, so it's not really a proper oil. But over here we made something special. And it was tied to his head. And so then it's takasim if neshu asa eil. So he's wearing an eil. So if a person, let's say would wear an umbrella, he would wear, let's say, if you have an umbrella that's put on your head, so that would be usher because you're making an oil. You're making an oil, even though you're wearing it as a malbush. Yeah. And the Rambam says only if it's stuck to your head. If it's not stuck to your head, so since this is very easily to fall off, so then it's not even considered an oil aray. Hanoita pareches ukiyetzeba. A person is hanging up a pareches. Now, when you're hanging up a pareches, if you're hanging it for yourself, so part of the pareches will be like sticking over and be like an oil at that point in time. Hanoita pareches ukiyetzeba. Tzarich lihizor sheliyasa oil b'shor shenoita. While he's hanging it up, it shouldn't be an oil. Lefichach em hoisa pareches gedola toilen oisa shnayim aval echad asur. So when one person is hanging up a big pareches, so obviously he's hanging up one end of the pareches, and the other part is bending, is spreading over to be able to hang over the next part. So the violet's spreading over, and the male has become ganayos. Mashenkin, if the two people just pick it up, so then there's no oil being made through this pareches. The fichachem hoise pareches gedela teil nesa shnaim avalechad also. Again, a canopy that has a gag is ein meitchinese v'afilu asara she'efsher shelitigba ba'atma la'aretz v'tiyasa eil are. I don't really understand this seer. I mean, we're talking about you're hanging it up. So what are we saying? We're saying kilo she'esh lagag is ein meitchinese. You can't pull it out because you're picking it up in order to be magbiyat. I don't have what it says here. Beged, yeah. Over here, so that's the halacha. V'imhois tekilah sheyesh lagag emeit chenesa v'afilu asara sheyefshe shelitigba ba'atmi al haaretz v'tiyasa eil arei. Halacha lamed gimel. Beged shemechase bepi achavis liyechase beis kula mepnei shenasa oil. Even though you're covering the chavis, l'chura the chavis has other things. I mean. But since you're covering the chavis says, so you're making an oil by putting the beged on top of the chavis. Avul mechasu mixas peh. You don't put it over the entire peh. You put it over mixas peh. That's mutter. Hamasanen bekvifa mitzris. You're using a kvifa mitzris to be a sif, which you're allowed to. Let's say for water that's clean, you want to make it cleaner, or you want to make wine which don't have dregs. Is leyagbia karkis akfifa min akeli tefach. Again, if you're raising it up over a tefah, so you're making an oil. So this kfifa mitzvah, which is hanging over the keli, goes into the gather of an oil aray, which creates a lot of questions. In other words, the churam, you're putting up, you put a cover over a pot, you put a pot over a kira. So the churam, why isn't that called an oil? Why is putting a beged over a chavis called an oil? That's also necessary. And but the gather parechas also you have to understand. Before we said that when you take a table and you set up a table, that's not an oil because under it is not made for an oil. So the chur over here, you're setting up a parechas. You want a parechas to stand straight, and now levaila, while you're setting it up, is you're going to have an oil. So how is that an oil? It needs explanation. The Rabbi argues with this din of aneta parechas.